Fellas, this may be the moment you've all been waiting for. The FSE running back prospect model takes on the 2025 running back class. I will guarantee this will be probably the best, if not one of the best, running back videos you watch this entire offseason on the 2025 running back class. Today, we're going to go through my running back prospect model, how I built the thing briefly because I broke it down a lot last year. We're going to go through each tier of the running back class this year and talk about how these guys stack up historically, who their comps are, what kind of prospects they are. All of that stuff will be covered in today's video. So hammer the like button, subscribe if you're new around here. But before we get into it, the prospect model is available for you guys to tinker around with and have a lot of fun with, which wasn't available last year, but it is now. And it has 2025 guys in it. Let's say, for example, you want to compare running back prospects like Omarion Hampton and Kaleb Johnson to some historical guys going back to 2016. You could choose metrics that those guys hit, round to draft capital, weight of 215 plus pounds, who averaged 25 plus PPR points per game their final collegiate season, their best collegiate season. Boom, you get some historical comps for those guys: Joe Mixon, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry. That is available to you over on flockfantasy.com, which will be linked down below in the pinned comment. Sign up annually with code FSE, and you get a free voucher for a team review and a buy-sell hold report for free, and you will get some email instructions for how to actually redeem those vouchers, our rankings, our draft guides, all of the other creators' rankings and draft guides. Rookie version number 1 is going to be coming out for us on February 20th, and more, all available to you for that annual subscription. And of course, it'll go through some updates once we get athletic testing, once we get pro day numbers, once we get draft capital, all that good stuff. So let's get into the video. I'm going to briefly break down the process of the model. If you guys don't really care about this part, or you already heard it last year, you can skip ahead if you want, but I do highly recommend listening to this part if this is the first time you're checking this out. The goal of the prospect model, the goal of any prospect model, is to identify the rookie running backs that are the best picks, the rookie running backs that are the worst picks. If Dynasty Fantasy Football was an algebra equation, we would be trying to solve for elite fantasy running backs. That would be the X variable that we're looking for. And you can measure that in two different ways. Number one, the most obvious, is fantasy production, PPR points per game through year 1 to 3 of their NFL career, because in Dynasty, we want early production. We don't want to have to wait 7 years for a guy to be a good Dynasty running back. And number two, which is also very important, is Dynasty value, which is measured by their peak keep trade cut running back ranking following their rookie season. So anything that they do prior to like January, February after their rookie season will not count, because as we know, we kind of need to see what their first year of production looks like, what that tradability factor is going to look like after their rookie year. Because even though, let's say, Javonte Williams, Cam Akers, Miles Sanders never became elite fantasy running backs, they did spike in value to the point that you could have sold high on them, and we want to account for that in the prospect model. So quickly, before I get into the actual model here, data points that we don't have for the 2025 prospects yet, because this could change how they rank going forward, is official heights, weights, and athletic testing. We have not had the NFL Scouting Combine yet. I used heights and weights listed from their college website, which are usually a little bit higher than what they actually come in at. And also, too, I did take some of them from the Senior Bowl, which are official measurements for those who actually attended, and I've ran those heights, weights, and I've ran them through the prospect model as if they did not test at the NFL Combine, because of course we've seen plenty of prospects do that. But once we actually see them test, that'll affect their grade. Official draft capital, right now I'm using estimates of their draft capital based on NFLmockdraftdatabase.com. My film grades are not in for every running back yet. They are in for about 12, 13 running backs in the model, because the first edition of our draft guide will have, I believe, 13 running backs in it, and that'll be coming out a week from tomorrow, so that's February 20th. Edition 2 will probably be coming out a few weeks after the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll have 50, 55 prospects in that one. So I may do this video again in a couple of weeks. I'll probably definitely do it in post-draft, shortly after the NFL draft, for those of you guys that need it for rookie classes. So quickly, I'm going to go through kind of, is the model predictive? How did I build the thing? Again, if you're new around here, I suggest listening to this part, but you can skip ahead if you want. Short answer, is this model more predictive than draft capital? Because if it isn't, there's no point of even using it. You might as well just listen to what the NFL says about these players. It is more predictive than draft capital. The R-squared value, correlation loosely, is 37.22% higher for the prospect model than it is for raw draft capital, beating it by about 13% hit rate wise. So you are definitely more likely to hit on productive running backs by following this model than you are by just verbatim following what the NFL does. And same goes for peak dynasty value as well. You can see that the model's R-squared value is about 20.64% higher in draft capital in relation to how they value these prospects after their first year in Dynasty keep trade cut value. This obviously took a little bit of a hit this year. It used to actually be a little bit higher because some of the highest graded prospects from last year didn't really have great seasons. You have Jonathan Brooks, who of course got injured. Trey Benson didn't really get a lot of touches. Blake Corum, Audric Estime, a lot of those guys didn't do much. And the guys that did perform, Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy, were a little bit further down in the model's, grades, but we do have plenty of time for those guys to still hit. Again, we're just going off of a one-year sample size versus multi-year sample size with previous draft classes for them, so I expect that to correct itself over time. Again, how the model works, I tested so many metrics when I was in Sicily last spring. The older running backs to target and avoid videos are also examples of metrics that I tested. At running back, we found that things like size, athleticism, commanding a big workload in college, receiving ability, traits to break tackles, efficiency on your touches, level of competition, etc. All that stuff mattered, and all of that stuff is in the prospect model. The final results were a 35% analytics grade, a 35% traits grade, so size, athleticism, things like that, 30% film grade, so I measured that using draft capital from the NFL, PFF rushing, PFF receiving grades. If I had graded the prospect, because my grades didn't go back as far as further than 2021, then I used my grades as well, and I have the adjustments on the screen there. Analytics bonuses were also given to players who, for example, played with a bad quarterback in college, had a lot of other talented running backs in their backfield, and also guys that improved upon their production. Let's say they had a good freshman season, got a little bit better as a sophomore, and then blew the hell up as a junior. I wanted to reward prospect profiles like that because they have shown to be very, very good in hit rate wise in the NFL. So last year, again, I went through the entire prospect model. I went through everything in depth. I'll link that video down below in the description. But the cliff notes of how I built this thing are this. For each metric, I'd find the trend line, basically the point that we want to look for, want to solve for only running backs who became fantasy studs, guys who had at least a 15 plus PPR point per game season. We wanted to know the average of, let's say, their weight. And that average ended up being 215 pounds, just as an example. And then I would grade each prospect on each metric based on that mark, and that's what compiled their overall grade. So again, I went through it in depth last year if you want to check it out. That culminated into their FSE grade out of 100%. And the prospect tiers that you guys can see on the screen with all of the accompanying hit rates. So as you can see here, 2016 to 2022, meaning we have at least 1, 2, and 3 years of production from these players. Generational was the best tier of prospect. There's only 3 guys in there. Workhorse, RB1 upside, RB2 upside, flex play, waiver wire, and then fodder, so on and so forth. You can see that some of these guys, if you win this tier, you were very, very likely to be a stud, and the expected PPR points per game years 1 to 3 are on the right side there. And then correspondingly as well, we have dynasty value, which we can measure as recently up to last year's class. Generational, workhorse, running back 1 upside, so on and so forth. Again, you could see the peak keep trade cut values on average for each running back in that tier on the right side as well. To give you an example of who were the best running backs in the history of the model, since 2016, we have Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey, the only 3 running backs who are generational prospects in the model, meaning they achieved a grade of over 90%. You might also notice that they have this other category beside their prospect tier that says rookie draft tier based on draft capital. And basically what this means is that they either got, basically canned advice spit out to them based on where they were drafted and their FSC prospect model grade. So they were either labeled a smash, a solid pick, a bust, a potential landmine, a, sleeper, whatever. For example, all 4 of these running backs on the screen were drafted in round 2. All of them have different labels because they were different caliber prospects, and dynasty drafters know inherently that second-round running backs are good, so you want to know exactly where to value these guys in rookie drafts. For example, Jonathan Taylor, such a great prospect. He was a smash pick wherever he was going. Nick Chubb, very solid pick. A.J. Dillon, a little bit of bust potential there. Kerryon Johnson was labeled as a landmine because as a second-round pick, he probably got pushed up the board, and that's why we were trying to avoid him. And this, of course, did change depending on where you were drafted. For example, if you had a 65% FSC prospect model grade in the flex place tier and you were a round 5 pick, you'd be labeled as a sleeper. If you had a 65% prospect model grade, you were drafted in round 1, you'd be one of the biggest landmine in the history of the prospect model. So that's why I included it, is because dynasty players inherently know that draft capital is important. which is why I wanted to include something that spit out some advice saying, hey, is this guy a good pick, bad pick, relatively speaking, where he's going to go in rookie drafts. So you should kind of understand how this prospect model works at this point. For the most part, you get graded on a curve of top 15 fantasy running backs or guys that have achieved a 15-plus point per game season. That grade on each prospect trait will culminate into your overall FSC grade, and then you're placed in your prospect tier bucket. And again, of course, there's corresponding hit rates for those. And then the rookie draft tier is based on your draft capital and your FSC grade in combination there. So let's get to the important part. You guys may have skipped to this part. Let's get into the 2025 class. I'm sure a lot of you guys want to know how good is this class? Who are the best running backs in this class? How do these guys stack up? Who are their comps? All that kind of stuff will be covered here. So I'm going to go in order of their FSC grade in the prospect model. Again, we don't have official rankings yet because we are missing a few pieces of information, athletic testing, official size, official draft capital, that kind of stuff. These will also not be my official rankings either. These are meant to be kind of a guideline. I don't want the model to just tell you exactly who to draft and when to draft them. Of course, we're going to also break down film and stuff, and we actually did that on Monday. If you guys want to check out the top 10 running backs in the 2025 class that we did, we're going to do the same thing for wide receivers next week as well. We have one unanimously RB1 101 first-round running back in this class, and I'm sure the question a lot of people have is, was Ashton Jeanty in the generational tier? The answer is he was not, or he is not, at least yet. He is a workhorse tier prospect for now, and as I go through each of the prospect tiers, I'll break down hit rates and stuff. You guys can see them on the screen right now. 100% hit rate for an RB1 season, Ashton Jeanty's prospect tier that he's in. 83% chance that he peaks as a top 5 Dynasty running back. An expected PPR point per game value of 16.78. So we're talking very, very rarefied air here. His historical comps being listed there as Ezekiel Elliott and Leonard Fournette. Those are the only real guys that are close to the generational tier, but not quite there. And Jeanty actually is the head of the workhorse tier right now. The biggest detractor for Jeanty and why he didn't land in the generational tier, because some people might be wondering that, is the fact that he loses points for not playing in a Power 5 conference, and he had a weaker strength of schedule than a lot of like the Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley guys in the generational tier. And he also took a little bit of a step down as a receiver this year. But for the most part, we're talking about a superstar prospect here. The way he gets to generational is simple because he could still get there if he blows up the combine. If he has a 9.5 plus RAS score, I believe he will just sneak in to the generational tier, assuming he then also goes in the top 10 of the NFL draft. If he goes 20th overall, he probably has no chance of getting into the generational tier. But if he goes top 10 and he blows up the combine, he has a chance of getting there. Again, he is the only prospect in the workhorse plus tier, so workhorse or generational. Nobody even sniffed this area of the draft last year. The last running back that we had in this area was Bijan Robinson in 2023. The running back one upside prospects. There was one last year in this class, in the 2024 class, that was Jonathan Brooks. And again, we had a lot of stuff that we had to talk about with him because he was coming off of a torn ACL. Assuming he wasn't, that he would have been in the RB1 upside prospect tier last year. There are a whopping 5 of them in this class. So in addition to Jeanty, who's better than any prospect we had last year, we also have 5 guys who were comparable or better than Jonathan Brooks last year. So hit rates for this area, 62% chance at RB1 production. You also have a 92% chance of RB2 production, a 75% chance at RB1 dynasty value on keep trade cut post year 1, an expected PPR point per game total of 12.64, and expected keep trade cut value peaking at RB11 on average. So these guys all very capable of being RB1s in Dynasty very early in their NFL careers. Omarion Hampton is the RB2 in the prospect model right now. Best comparable prospects appear to be Nick Chubb and Javonte Williams. You got, a guy that wears the same number as him, and then a guy that went to the same school as him. So as of now, he's got better analytics than Nick Chubb, but worse film traits than Javonte Williams. So he's kind of like a combination of the two guys. He's got a chance to enter the workhorse tier. He would probably need to be drafted in the first round for it to happen and also blow up the combine, which he's definitely capable of doing both things. And I would say he definitely should blow up the combine. Physical traits are the best part of Hampton's profile. Film is where the gripes for scouts, and myself included, came for Omarion Hampton. I expect this grade to go up after the combine a little bit. Does it crack the RB or the workhorse tier, which he would need over 80% to get? I'm not sure yet because he has a little bit to climb, but it is possible that he gets up to that range. This one will shock a lot of people. The RB3 in the prospect model as of now, based on, some projection here, is Cam Skattebo of Arizona State. He is projected 91st overall draft capital. So we're not even talking about a guy who's projected to go in the top 50 right now, and that's why he's being overvalued. No, he's actually being drafted on NFL Mock Database in the 3rd round. His best comparable prospects listed here is Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker. Like, we're talking about some rarefied air for a 3rd round pick, especially when you compare him to Kamara, who was also a 3rd round pick, the receiving traits that both of these guys have, the lack of elite speed that both of them have. It's time to start throwing Cam Scadaboo's name into the conversation with these other guys, because he lost some points analytically because he played for a small school his first 2 years. He's a little bit overaged as a prospect. He missed the mark in some traits areas as well. But he's a rock-solid option, man, especially knowing that most fantasy drafters are not going to take this guy in the 1st round of rookie drafts. It feels pretty good knowing that you're probably going to get him in round 2 of rookie drafts, and he ranks very similarly to a lot of the guys here that you're going to have to take in the 1st round of rookie drafts, including the next guy here, which is Travion Henderson, running back of Ohio State, who is running back 4 in the FSC prospect model right now. The closest comp we have is actually last year's RB1, Jonathan Brooks, or former Ohio State Buckeye J.K. Dobbins here. Henderson lost the most points analytically. Those 2 down years as a sophomore and a junior with the injuries that he had really did hurt him from being higher. He probably would have been higher had he come out last year and had a great season as a junior or whatever. He also did lose some points on film for me for some of the shortcomings that he had. He is one of the prospects I've graded already. The good part about Henderson is that he should crush the combine as well, and he could improve his trait score as a result, and maybe he sneaks into round 1 of the NFL draft. I think for the most part, he'll probably end up in this same territory no matter what happens to him, because we kind of expect him to test well. We kind of expect him to go in the top 2 rounds of the NFL draft, but there's a chance he sneaks up closer to where Hampton and Scadaboo are going forward. And then the next 2 guys closing out the RB1 upsides here are Quinshon Judkins, his teammate at Ohio State, and Kaleb Johnson of Iowa, both expected to be fringe round 2 picks right now. Johnson, a very early 3rd round pick in ADP. Judkins, a very late 2nd round pick. The big thing for Judkins would be testing well, because I actually prefer, when I watch the tape of these guys in my actual rankings, I have Judkins over Henderson in my rankings, and I thought he had better film. If he tests well, he has a chance to improve his overall traits grade, which is where he's actually lost the most points right now, because on Ohio State film, he didn't really score highly in efficiency marks, because when you watch the tape of these 2 guys, Henderson got all the, creative, outside zone receiving type of stuff, and Judkins did all the dirty work. So his traits grade took a hit as a result of that, but of course he did have his Ole Miss production to help make up for that stuff. Kaleb Johnson, testing well would really help him too, and being drafted higher than 66th overall would help him. If he got into the 2nd round, he would actually grade higher than Quinshon Judkins, so him just being barely in the 3rd round definitely hurt him a little bit. It still is crazy that we're talking about like the RB5 and the RB6 in the prospect model right now being a 62% hit rate to RB1s in the NFL, and having a 75% chance to peak as RB1s on market value on Keep Trade Cut. The expected points per game of these RB1 upside guys is great. I mean, 12.64 PPR points per game, the peak value being RB11. Like I said, it is very, very good that all of these dudes, all 5 of the guys that I just mentioned, are RB1 upside caliber prospects, and we do have a chance that we actually get more RB1 upside caliber prospects. So that's the tier 2 of this class. The tier 3 of this class, I think, is actually kind of the underrated part of this class. I think there's quite a bit of upside here. The RB2 upside prospects, again, the hit rates for this area is you got a 27% chance of being an RB1 production-wise, a 67% chance of being an RB2 production-wise. Then you also could peak on the market as an RB1 37% of the time on Keep Trade Cut, 68% of the time peaking as an RB2, averages around 10.54 PPR points per game, and 20 RB20 rank on Keep Trade Cut. So RB2 level upside prospects here. You guys can see Dylan Sampson and Ollie Gordon are the highest ranked of the guys here. They're expected to be 3rd round NFL draft picks. Best comps that we have, Ollie Gordon compares favorably to Trey Benson and Rachaad White. Remember, Trey Benson was last year's RB2 in the model, and we're talking about the RB6 or RB7 in this class right now. Dylan Sampson compares favorably to Devon Achane, which ironically was also my film comp for him as well, and they are actually quite similar in terms of their profiles. Gordon lost a lot of points analytically for his down 2024 season, but traits-wise, his 2023 campaign really carried his numbers, and at 6'1", 233 pounds, if he tests tests well, like if he runs fast, runs 4.4 or something like that, he's going to have a chance to really climb up his traits grade and have a chance maybe to get into the RB1 upside prospect territory, especially if he were to get, let's say, top 2-round draft capital instead of top 3-round draft capital, and he had like a 9+ RAS score. He's going to have a chance to really get up there and make that 5-tier, tier 2 of running backs a 6-tier if he ends up testing well and, has a good combine. Dylan Sampson already is expected to test really fast. He's going to run fast. I'm not really worried about that. He's definitely analytically worse than Achane was, because even though him and Achane play very similarly, Achane had multiple years of production versus 1 year of production like Dylan Sampson has, and Achane carried a bigger workload both rushing and receiving. So his comp is more of like a Devon Achane light than it is actually Devon Achane, but it is encouraging knowing that, Achane's literally top 5 Dynasty running back, and we're talking about the RB8 in the class right now. We're still looking for, second rounders to throw flyers on in this class, and these two guys are going to be some of the best that we have. Still in the RB2 upside tier, we do have 3 more names. So again, 5 RB1 upside prospects, a workhorse prospect, and 5 RB2 upside prospects. RB9 through 11 in the prospect model. We have Byshell Tootin from Virginia Tech. Admittedly, I have not graded him yet, but he does have a comparable, situation here to the likes of a Ronald Jones or a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What I do know about him is that he has pretty good size and he's pretty fast, and he had good production in college. So there's a chance that he ends up being a big-time riser if he runs fast at the combine. He is listed right now at 124th overall draft capital, but he could vault himself into day 2 if he runs a fast 40 time. Like I said, he also kind of compares to James Cook a little bit as well. Devin Neal from Kansas and DJ Giddens from Kansas State are the other 2 guys in this tier. With Devin Neal, you got a cross between, Kareem Hunt and Audric Estime, which makes sense. A lot of people are questioning Devin Neal's speed. Neither of those guys ran very fast. He's pretty solid across the board. I think he could make up a lot of ground because I do think relative to Kareem Hunt and Audric Estime, he's faster than those guys. Those guys ran in the 4.6s and 4.7s respectively. I think that Devin Neal should run in the 4.5s at some point. Maybe he sneaks into the 4.4s. So I feel pretty good about him. He's one of my favorite prospects in the entire draft. DJ Giddens is an analytics darling, and he has film concerns for sure, and that shows up in his profile with Bryce Love, who is his most, accurate comp right now, and that was exactly the same situation. Good analytics, not as great a film. Draft capital might be a question mark for Giddens as a result. So here's how nutty this class is. Last year's flex play prospects of note. So we're into RB12 through, RB20 right now, and this tier of flex play prospects is where Bucky Irving was, Jalen Wright was, Tyrone Tracy was, Blake Corum was, Marshawn Lloyd was. All of these guys were like, RB3 through RB7 for most people last year. We're at RB12 in this class, and there is 9 more guys comparable to those prospects. So absolutely berserk how good this class is. Hit rates here are 18% chance of RB1 production, 34 and 42% chance of RB2 and RB3 production, respectively, peaking as an RB1 in market value just 11% of the time. So again, we're usually talking about day 3 guys here or late day 2 guys. RB2, 30% of the time in peak keep trade cut value, expected points per game of 6.63 PPR points, peak keep trade cut value around RB43. So again, these are more so dart throws. You're not going to hit on any one of these. You'll probably hit on just under half, like I said. Let's rattle off some of the comps here. I'm going to go a little bit faster because we're talking a lot of guys. Raheem Sanders, say hello to Deontay Foreman. That's his best comp in the model right now. Also compares a little bit to Chuba Hubbard. Sanders could still go higher if he runs fast, and his nickname is literally Rocket, so it's possible he blows up the combine. What I love about the comps that come up for him, Foreman and Hubbard, is the fact that all of these guys are kind of similar, where they had one really good college season. For Sanders, that was as a true sophomore, and he's kind of been bad or subpar the last 2 years. For Foreman, it was his junior season. For Hubbard, it was his sophomore season. And there was like a lot of question about their profile. But in the NFL, we've seen Hubbard obviously be really good. And we've seen Foreman in flashes be pretty solid. And he actually tore his Achilles. So, he probably would have been a lot better if that didn't happen. So definitely exciting for Raheem Sanders as a late round dart throw. RJ Harvey from Central Florida. Best comp is Marlon Mack from South Florida. Good traits. Not as good on the analytics side as he is on the trait side. And, He should probably test pretty fast and run pretty fast as well. And the small school nature of his profile really kind of dinged him as well. 2 pass catching specialists in this class that are interesting. LaQuint Allen, who is really young, from Syracuse, to former Tennessee Titan Darrington Evans is his best comp there. Definitely an interesting name in the 3rd, 4th round of rookie drafts as well. And then one older and more experienced guy with Woody Marks, comparing favorably to Chase Edmonds, who was also older and more experienced coming out from a small school himself. And then we get into tier 2, or flex plays tier 2, because again, I said there was 9 guys in here and I just went through like 4 or 5 of them. More 3rd round dart throws for us 0 RB thirsty running back guys. Like, this is the range of the draft where 3 of these guys will probably hit. I don't know which 3 it'll be. Nobody does. But if 3 of these guys hit, you should feel pretty good about this class, knowing that how much better the other prospects are. Brashard Smith of SMU, Trevor Etienne, Travis Etienne's younger brother, of the University of Georgia. Both of these guys profile similarly to like Nyheim Hines, Justice Hill, maybe even shades of like a Will Shipley or a Bucky Irving. So again, among that group of comps, you got like 1.5 hits. So that's kind of the range we're talking about hit rate wise that we're looking at. Damian Martinez, you got a thumper with great size. You got Braylon Allen as a comp, Jordan Howard as a comp, Ramondre Stevenson as a comp in this area. Jarquez Hunter from Auburn and Jordan James from Oregon, 2 guys with intriguing skill sets who I think could be combine risers if they test really well. Miles Gaskin, Justice Hill, Will Shipley, and again, Bucky Irving, Jordan James' former teammate, kind of coming in as comps there as well. So after the flex play tiers, again, we're talking RB21 in this class now. Waiver wire prospects. These are sizable drop-off from flex play guys. Hit rates of just 11% of the time for RB1 production, 17% RB2 production. Dynasty value, you're probably not getting an RB1 more than 5% of the time based on the hit rates. 15% of the time for RB2s are better. Expected points per game and peak keep trade cut value, not good. There's a lot more misses than hits in this range, but you can definitely see some hits like you see here. More prospects, you see Taj Brooks for Benny Snell as a comp. I mean, Benny Snell had some value at points in time. Jaquindon Jackson, similar to Tyrone Tracy. May have to keep my eye on that. I think I said Tracy was a flex place tier. He was actually waiver wire, but his prospect profile was weird because he played wide receiver for so long. Kyle Manangi from Rutgers and Khalil Mullings from Michigan, comparing favorably to Dameon Pierce. So again, another one. I know Manangi specifically has some love for a lot of people. Jaden Blue, Hook'em Horns, compares favorably to Boston Scott. Phil Maffa of Clemson compares favorably to Isaiah Pacheco. Again, try not to read into too much like, oh my God, he's going to be the next Pacheco. Pacheco needed to land in Kansas City and also tested super, super well for that to happen. Marcus Yarns, a small school guy from Delaware, and Donovan Edwards of the University of Michigan compare favorably to Jalen Warren. Again, one of these guys maybe hits big, maybe 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky. But it is worth noting that we're like RB 21 through 27 in this class, and we're still talking about guys potentially being hits in the NFL. If you have not noticed already, this is an absurdly deep, absurdly middle class heavy. The only thing that we're missing is in 2017, for example, a lot of people are probably wondering, how does this class compare to 2017's class? You could see the entire 2025 class on the screen right now. The makeup, like I said, 1 workhorse, potentially a generational if he ends up testing really well. 5 RB1 upsides. Maybe we get a 6th if Ollie Gordon tests well. 5 RB2 upsides, 9 flex plays, and then the rest waiver wire and fodders. But a decent amount of flex plays and waiver wires makes for a very deep class. In 2017, the makeup was a little different. You saw a couple absolute superstars like Christian McCaffrey as a generational prospect. We saw basically 2 Jeantys with Fournette and Mixon. And then we saw the RB1 upside prospects of Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, and then Kareem Hunt, the RB2 upside prospect. If you followed this in 2017, you would have basically nailed exactly the order you should have been drafting these guys, especially at the top. But again, we did see a lot of these flex plays guys hit. Aaron Jones, James Conner, Marlon Mack, Foreman to some degree, waiver wire guy, and Chris Carson, Jamal Williams ended up hitting. So the 2025 class is not as good at the top as the 2017 class was, but it is actually deeper than the 2017 class was. The class in 2020 at the top and deepness-wise is a lot more comparable to the 2025 class. You could see there, you got 1 workhorse, JT to Jeanty. You got a couple of RB1 upside guys. Like I said, we have a couple RB1 upside guys in this class. There's a few more RB2 and flex play caliber dudes like the Dillons and the CEHs and the Darrington Evans and the Keyshawn Vaughns. We have more guys like that in this class than we did in 2020, but it is very comparable, especially at the top. It comes at the perfect time too, because when we think about the 2017 class, how historic it was, how many great RB1 seasons we got out of these guys, a lot of them are still playing really well. CMC, Mixon, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, among this, top 24 running back scoring guys this year from that class. But we have seen a number of them fall off already. Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Chris Carson's retired, Jamal Williams, Marlon Mack. A lot of those guys have fallen off already, and I suspect within the next 1 to 2 years, most of them, if not all of them, will be gone from the NFL, from the 2017 class. So this 2025 class should be the new era of running backs in the NFL. So that is the end of this video. Again, I went super in depth. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is probably one of the best running back prospect videos you're going to watch the entire offseason, at least analytically. Maybe people are doing film breakdowns and stuff like that. Hammer the like button if you enjoyed. If you're interested in film breakdowns, we will be doing those later in the offseason, probably in April, breaking down all 22 of a lot of the top prospects in this class. Those, of course, will be to Flock Fantasy site subscribers. You already know that the wide receiver version of this video is coming next week, so definitely leave some love in the comments there. If you want to tinker with all of the fun metrics in the prospect model, you can basically put this in your own hands. I didn't go through like how everybody stacked up on each individual metric, but you can see that on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE, head to the Flock Fantasy Prospects tab, and make sure to sign up using our promo code to get our rankings, our draft guides, our access to first priority on Dynasty decisions. And of course, the best deal that you can get is getting a free voucher for a team review and a free voucher for a buy, sell, hold report by signing up with code FSE for an annual Mother Flocker package. Those two things of value there are basically the price of the annual subscription, and you get access to the site all year long. Instructions with how to redeem those vouchers, if you're confused on how to do it, will be sent to your email after you sign up. So if that interests you, definitely check it out. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.